let's move towards what these things actually mean in terms of climate action. So this is an example from a book, a chapter in a book that is listed here. So this talks about conventional planning that transforms nature. So society sits there and thinks of economic activities, politics, and environment as independent things with some intersections or overlaps, whereas in the bioregion context, you think of the environment being the key uniting factor for all these sectors within the bioregion. Okay, so whatever you do, you think of the bioregion in terms of your impacts, solutions to keep the integrity, biodiversity, and other things. This is kind of what economist Dale Herman would say about sustainability as well. So you can put environment outside and think of economy, sustainability, and culture, and you will get a similar picture. So bioregional ethics in that context looks for local place-based attachments and cultural affinities and motivation that can be built on to drive bioregional ethics. This is from the Rooted Communities, which is an African American NGO that helps African Americans become powerful as a community, as a rooted community. So their idea is that in general the conventional situation works like this, where you have consultants, public sector, community, landowners, buyers, tenants, capital, with developers sitting in the middle and trying to find common ground. Whereas in the rooted community concept, they would like to have a dialogue between community leaders and developers and have a development partnership that actually you can see brings everybody much closer and then begins to have overlaps of common interests. So without using the word bioregion, this organization is going into rooted communities. And later on we will also see the concept of rooted universities, where universities take a more active role in engaging the local communities, including in their curriculum development and so on. So this from this paper we can look at this in a slightly different way again, looking at a sustainable regional development goal with regional governance, and within that you have environmental sustainability. That's a good thing. That's what the Herman Daly concept would say. Social sustainability within that, because they sit within the environment, the bioregion, and economic sustainability, which must worry about social sustainability and environmental sustainability. So you have sustainable urban development with decentralized local governance, and you have sustainable rural development with decentralized local governance, and there are interaction, as we saw before in another schematic, includes migration, remittances, cultural, social values, natural resources, and ecosystem services. This comes in terms of water, competition for drinking water, for example, for agriculture versus urban uses, and generally urban centers tend to dominate. So the idea is to make sure that nobody loses sight of their close dependence and interaction with the rural communities around. Even for governance partnerships, infrastructure and basic services, and input-output markets. Okay. Within that, we have the concept of green infrastructure, which we already defined. Again, combining infrastructure, which is built environment, and green, which is taking into account the environment in which you build. Right? That should relate to climate action. So this is showing the distribution of populations with lacking access to improved water sources as a baseline over 1990 to 2050, and the population lacking access to basic sanitation facilities. So usually baseline means business as usual. Okay, so this is showing organization for economic cooperation and development, which is a group of countries. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and ROW is rest of the world. So you can see here the different range from 1990. So this is the urban regions, and these are the rural regions. So this is population lacking access to improved water source. So there is a high service provided to urban centers, whereas rural centers are essentially ignored, but hopefully this is going to be taken care of, especially in OECD and BRICS countries. That's the projection anyways. And this is population lacking access to basic sanitation. Again, rural area gets neglected. So this cannot stand if the idea of bioregion and localization has to deal with these problems together. Okay, that water problem also then relates to what is typically referred to as water climate energy nexus, and we'll see next there is also a food water energy nexus. Basically that means you cannot worry about water resource management anymore without worrying about climate impacts on water resources like droughts, floods, and human exploitation of water. And you cannot worry about energy and energy intensity of GDP, carbon intensity of energy, and so on without worrying about its dependence on climate for energy demand versus its reliance on water as a resource, like in hydroelectric and so on. Right? So this is just a schematic, but there are other schematics around as well. This comes from this Science for the People source. So it's talking about scarcity and demand of water, extraction and consumption, which affects carbon emissions, pollution, and habitat destruction. So there is a feedback with climate and climate feedbacks onto this sector. And then there is energy, which has extraction and consumption, which depends on water and has a feedback. So it has scarcity and demand as well, as we saw with the map of night lights, for example. And that affects emissions, pollution, and habitat destruction as well, and affects climate change. There is no direct arrow shown back here, but it's shown to come through water. So that's why this is nexus. Basically means they are all intimately tied together and you cannot really separate them. You have to deal with them together. So localization obviously matters for that, because generally you have to worry about watershed level, green infrastructure, bioregionalism, and climate action, as we will see with specific examples.